So welcome back to Turn It Round the Corner, podcast number 2. I think in the modern day era of football, one of the biggest changes or the biggest, I'd say, phenomenons and rise right now is all around one-to-one coaching, especially in youth football. So I've got with me someone today that people around the South End area would know. Chis Sutherby runs a one-to-one coaching company. And we want to go over why it's become such a big thing in the game. Why he thinks it's got so big, and what his typical week and what he concentrates on with these young boys and girls. So, Suthers, nice to meet you. How you doing?
Yeah, really good. I've literally just got off of the coaching pitch 20 minutes ago, so it's good to sit back down and have a chat with you.
So I've dragged you out of the heat, probably saved you. It's a very unusually nice day in Leigh-on-Sea today. Sun's out, obviously very hard to coaching in this weather, but we shouldn't moan. It'll probably back to rain on Monday. But just to give the listeners an introduction, you just want to give an introduction of yourself and your company and what you're doing, really, to start off with.
Yeah. So myself, I'm 43. I've lived out Leigh-on-Sea Eastwood Way for 22 years. Before that, I lived out near Burnham on Crouch. Non-league people will probably know Burnham Ramblers. They were the Burnham Ramblers of Malden Town and now Malden and Tiptree. So I lived out in Tillingham till I was 21. Played out junior football in the Blackwater and Dengie League, and then obviously as we get older, we went EGA and played a little while at Malden Town. Got to 2021 and realised that I probably wasn't going to make it week in, week out. Body wouldn't allow me to do it. And Colin Wallington, back in the day, I think he lives in America now, he gave me the opportunity to do some coaching with Malden First Team. Don't think I would have got that opportunity if I hadn't have been playing there. But they were always quite happy with the way I saw the game, and at a young age I saw it quite maturely, and then it kind of led on from there. I then got a kind of gig at Southend United. I did teacher training at Greenswald in Hockley with my pal called Chis Sutherby, and he just took over the under-12s at Southend. Kind of just jumped in there and then went with the academy, was at the academy at Southend for 6 or 7 years, then moved to Colchester United. Family weren't overly happy being season ticket holders of Southend.
We don't mention Southend in this podcast, sorry, mate.
Yeah, a day for a different story. I remember Izzy Arikipen diving for a penalty at Orient, mate. You were probably cheering, and I was fuming when he kissed the Orient badge in front of us all. But went to Colchester and then kind of fell out of love with it a little bit, with the process of it all. Decided to do my own thing. Went back into the teaching route. Had a look at that at Dean's. I was there for about 5 or 6 years with some of the teaching. And then decided to work down at, it was Play Football, it's now Goals, opposite the hospital in Southend, on the 5-a-side courts, and started picking up coaching sessions, doing some stuff with Leigh Ramblers, and then kind of went back into Southend because they were there during the week. Instead of mentioning Southend, so I just coughed twice.
You're on, mate. Yeah. Totally joking.
And then COVID kind of hit, and then from that it was kind of, with the rules at the time, you can only meet one person outside, and it kind of just
happened from there,
yeah. And then all of a sudden, having a little pitch at Belfast Park, there was a second one-to-one coach, then a third one-to-one coach, then a fourth one-to-one coach, and everyone kind of saw that niche in the market. Because we had that period of 3 or 4 months, I was getting booked out at 7 in the morning and 8 o'clock at night, and like 7 days a week, because you didn't really know when the weekend was, and you didn't really know when the... and it just went from there and just exploded. Everyone's doing it. I think it's something for me, it's consistency. You'll do a group session at grassroots, you get an hour, and you have to do a bit of SAQ and you have to do a bit of possession. And then I think what we've found, and as I've found in the last kind of 6 or 7 years, the way the FA have gone, they've gone very much playmaker, touches on the ball, loads of skills, and it's kind of knitting it together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a great that is a great first intro. Give me a lot to sort of dig into there. But just on that point, like I'd say my reservations myself, being a parent, like yourself, having kids in that's play grassroots academy football. I feel like a lot of the one-to-one sort of, should we say, coaching concentrates on what you were talking about and what is generally termed ball mastery. And my reservation with that is that ball mastery sometimes is flicks and tricks for no reason. You talked about some academies there. You go into some academies now and there's a lot of speedboats, no drivers, right? That's got all the flicks and tricks in the world. And that would be an outsider looking in. And just for the record, my son Bertie hasn't had a lot of what I'd call one-to-one coaching. But when he has, or when I feel like he's needed an extra session or coming back off holiday or when he's been injured a few times, I'll put him into you because I feel like it's more what I'd call realistic. So talk to me about like how, as I say, the reason I wanted to speak to you is because everywhere you look now, I think everyone's having one-to-one coaches.
I think where it before is like, and I remember as a kid, right? I remember playing Kirby. You played it for football.
100%.
Like, and you would dink it onto the curb, or you'd do like against the garage wall, you'd do like in-step volleys. And I'd say to me, Dad, I've done 100. He'd go, try and get 200.
Yeah.
And you did. And now they don't because attention spans, etc.
Yeah, but there's a lot more to do, right?
You would also have, I remember growing up, I think it was on Canvey, there was a guy that did Curver.
Yeah, Curver coaching. I remember that from Australia.
It was too far for me. There was a guy, it was called Extras. It was kind of like before training. A guy would get a ball and serve a few headers and a few volleys and get a few punch passes. You do a little few extras or a few extras after. You'd get in there and do some 1v1s. Midfield would want to pressure. Look, there's coaching companies around. There's people around. There's the top of the tree, boys. You see in the off season. There's a viral video on social media of Dele Alli going out to summer in Portugal, and he's working in a group of 3, and they're working around mannequins, and it's sharp. And I think and I've got to tread carefully a little bit because it works for me because I see Dele Alli do it, running around a mannequin and getting it on the back foot and punching it in. And you having played, you can see the benefit of him ticking over.
Yeah, I'm not against. As I say, we're both on social media. I spend a lot of time looking at things, saving things for my son, thinking about when I've got to do a session with him or something to speak about that'll come up in his game. I've got no problem with that. What I've got, I'd say I'm very sceptical about the companies that are just teaching kids to do flicks, tricks, step overs without actually.
There's a few. There's a company called I think it's called Baby Ballers. Brilliant franchise guys, got them all over the place. And then from Baby Ballers, there's the Ballers Elite, and they have changed the game a little bit. There's this Ballers Elite. I think there's one at the Goals in Southend. 1v1s, 2v1s, ball manipulation, stepping out. And I've seen kids' wheels at under 7s, under 8s, under 9s, the centre half, and what hair we've got left, we would have pulled it out. He's got 1v1, the centre half, and he's nutmegged him. And when we played, it was stick it around the corner or shove it in the other half. And now they're stepping out. And do you know what? They're playing with no risk. And they're playing with no fear. And in that aspect, I think it's brilliant. But I do then think, especially when the game's on 3Gs and they're not on these perfect pitches, when you go to, and I'm not knocking this by any stretch, but when you go to Jones's Memorial or You go to some of the council pitches, the grass is 6, 7, 8 inches long.
Yeah.
And you try and do a double step over on that, you can't. You shovel it out your foot or you chip it out of the grass. And I think in them, and again, this sounds very English, in them winter months, it's knitting them punch pass. It's knitting them.
Yeah, and that's what I'm all. That's what I'm more talking about, as you say, the fundamentals of making better footballers. I'm 100% behind, but to then teach someone when and where to use that, that's what I feel like is a little bit missing. If you go and watch a lot of Cat 1, Cat 2's academies now, they are very much, pretty much everyone's the same. What I struggle with is I would prefer to take my boy to a session, for instance, and say to you, my son needs to work at receiving on the left foot or taking it on the back foot and implementing that into a game situation. As I say, I very struggle with the ideology that you can always do flicks and tricks, and as you say, as a centre half running out from the back. So, would you say your coaching ethos is more about game sort of style?
Yeah, I mean,
coaching, is it more ball mastery?
For instance, now I can show you a WhatsApp message from a parent that I've got, and it says the object would be to improve his ball skills so he can front face and run at the opponent in a 1v1 situation. Is that something you think you can coach my boy? Absolutely no problem. I think, touching on that quickly, I think when you see the analysis Monday night and they're breaking it down, and the best one I saw was Gary O'Neill. I don't know if you saw that, where he went into the session and showed what they were working on.
Yeah.
And he broke it down to individual bits. And then he was saying, I wanted to drive on the weak foot of the fullback and then cut. And that gives grassroots players an insight to what pros look like.
Yeah.
And it, this all these algorithms or not algorithms, all these JPL, EGA and all these abbreviated names in grassroots, they're seen as the holy grail, and people want to improve and get in the side. And, for me, having a parent message me going, can you help him front face in tight areas? That's the sort of stuff, no problem.
Do you like, maybe I'm old, maybe I'm a bit, my memory's going, but I don't remember this being about when we was kids. Like you had your obviously different teams. You could have your grassroots academy that was still there, but I don't remember kids doing anything outside of their team training, unless it was, as you say, curbs is in the street or over the park with a football. Is it now is that a way of a parent making their child do it because there's so many other distractions, or is it because everyone wants their kid now to be the next Messi because of all the money and fame involved in the game?
I would probably say there's a chance. I don't know whether you've seen it. Michael Owen says something about, I'll go back to the late 90s, early 2000s. He goes, them players in the Premier League are better footballers than they are now. 100%. And it gets a bit of unfair press, by the way, the one I'm just going to mention. But you look at someone like Jordan Henderson, right? By the way, and James Milner, the longevity and what they've got. But when you look at their game, it's so basic, but they execute it at such an unbelievable level.
Consistency, right?
Yeah, and you see someone, there is still, I think, a little bit of stigma where if Foden was Brazilian, he'd have 200 caps. But you say that, growing up, our Glenn Hoddle's not had 150 caps, and Matt Letizia is technically unbelievable.
Yeah.
But in terms of relating it, no, there wasn't. But I don't think that the only real time I got to see a Dennis Bergkamp or a Gascoigne was watching James Richardson's Football Attack.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
You'd watch the Euros and you see Karol Popolski, Chip Schmeichel, or whatever he'd done, and you'd only the scoop. You'd only see them things. Where now you only need to go on TikTok, X or Twitter or whatever it's called these days. But you only need to go on there and you'll see someone that's playing for Benfleet or White Ensign or Lee Ramblers, and they've got access to VO cameras.
Yeah.
And they've done a double step over, dropped someone on their backside and whipped the ball in, and they can now pick that up, and it goes viral. And that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for the end product. By the way, the cross went over the tree.
Yeah.
You know, it helps me getting people that want to work on specific things.
Yeah.
You get a lot of parents wanting to work on weaknesses. I'm 50-50 with it, because I then look at them and go, where's your superpower? What are you good at?
So touching on that, would you, like, my wife Charlotte's all very much like, there was an old adage back in the day that if you was at school, for instance, if you was great at science and not very good at maths, you should get a maths tutor. My wife's brought a bit of an ethos where if they're really good at science, for instance, let's get them a science teacher and make it their superpower.
Yeah. 100%.
So is it more that they want to get better at everything, or weaknesses, or like where do you go with that?
I look at, we've played enough games, and we played that game the other night at Roots Hall with a load of old men playing against a load of 16, 17, 8-year-old.
Don't win nothing with kids, mate.
You know, don't win nothing with kids. I think it was 3-0. Might be 4-0.
I think it's more than that, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I think, you know, you use look at them for argument's sake. I don't remember being like that, ripped like they were at that age. I don't remember looking the part, but I mean, physically unbelievable. And there's a big image now, and I don't remember being like that. All right, if you went to an academy or you were at a certain level, strength and conditioning, but in terms to, I look at some players I coach, and I think you've got a right niche to become brilliant at what you're really good at. And sometimes outside influences, parents, coaches, yeah, but he can't do this and he can't do that. But he can do this. And because it doesn't add up, they you know, you've had kids at 10 years old that have had 3 different clubs in a season because it doesn't fit in. I think, for the record, Shah's probably bang on. Be really, really good at what you're really, really good at. Because Bertie, for argument's sake, will go to senior school in the summer. How's he getting the school team if the PE teacher's not football specific? So what's he going to be really good at? You know, why is he in the team and he's not? Or he's going to play him because he's really quick. Well, yeah, okay, that's one of 50 categories that makes you really good at football, but that kid's playing because he's quicker than him. And that might be the way that gets in. And I'm only using that as an example.
Yeah, sure.
But if you look at someone and you go, he's good, well, what's his strength? Well, not sure. What's his weakness? We hasn't got any. Well, what's he really good at? Well, we're not sure. There's an argument to say, well, you're going to have to go as a sub because you're the ideal sub, right?
Yeah,
or you're the ideal...
someone who plays in every position.
In every
right?
position. And look, over the course of the year, they've got that. But there's someone like a Milner, and I'm not knocking Milner, by the way, he's had an unbelievable career, but does he get 200 England caps if he's just really good at playing?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a big argument for that. As I say, if I look at my personal sort of the way I've looked with my child, like, you know, he's been at Leyton Orient Academy for the last 4 years, and it was always very much like, got to do this, got to do that. Whereas I was a bit like, well, you're an old school centre half. There ain't many about anymore. You just keep doing what you're doing. We'll work on the other stuff. So I think football is divided at the minute. I think, I don't know, you was torn, but I think it's more in our day. I think everyone played football more socially. Whereas now, I think because of the superstar status and the money involved, everyone wants their kid to be a footballer, right? So they're gonna spend the money and push that. The bit I think the biggest difference, maybe not at Bert's age, but I think when you get to 15, 16, and I remember playing in a game and we played in the South East Essex combination. Dagenham and Redbridge come down to Malden. And they lost on the Saturday. Tuesday night brought their full first team down. Judah McDougall, like Dean Parrott, they were a joke side. Yeah.
We drew 0-0 with them. I think it was 0-0, might have been 1-0, but we drew with them. And they played a 3 in midfield and we played a 2. We had to problem solve. tuck your two wingers in, stay really narrow. And we had to do that in game.
Yeah.
I do feel that we are taking that decision making away because people don't want that rogue.
Yeah, listen, I think you've touched on one of the, I would say, the hottest topics that I would bring up every Sunday at Leyton Orient. I'd say you touched on a point earlier where most players now in full-time football are all athletes, all probably as good or if not better skillful-wise than back in the day. Athletes, far better athletes. But to your point, I do feel that football intelligence has taken an all-time low. I look at, from academy football all the way through to non-league and full-time football. I wouldn't say that players these days are leaders and know the game as inside out or love the game as much as past.
Let's be fair. I know we had sticker albums and Football Manager and bits and pieces, but if I went to you 1997, you knew every player in every team. You knew that.
But would you say that's more of because there's less distractions now?
Possibly.
You can have PlayStations out, or is it because now, as you say, as you get through that academy system to the higher levels, they don't want any grey area, so they make all the decisions for it. You're pretty much taught.
But I also remember watching an Italian coach, and I was like, this is at 16, 17, and looking at him going, what's all this unopposed passing patterns? What's going on here?
Yeah.
And then you saw a Dutch coach, and it was all 1v1s and 2v2s, and you're thinking, what's going on here? And someone said on the TV the other day, what's English football? And I think Pep's changed it, but he's actually changed it. You've got people at Southend, I don't know if there is a Southend Borough Comedy more or the Essex Olympian League in the lower divisions, they're rolling the ball out because they don't want to play out. And I get it, I understand it, but when you've got the team I'm not allowed to mention in this postcode and Leyton Orient, when you've watched them and you're doing it, but there's a knock-on effect in kids football where they're looking to play out, and with the greatest respect, some of the local pitches, I mean, you can't play on them, but they're trying to play, and there's no learning from the mistakes. So I get a gig and go to someone, can you do this? I'm lucky enough to work on a 3G. It's perfect.
Yeah.
I can punch it in. You do it at a pitch with this it becomes really difficult, and I think within one-to-one coaching as well, which is what I was going to say to you, I think there's 25 in the postcode, and I wouldn't ever knock anyone doing anything. I wouldn't say anything, but I think they've got different strengths. I think there's a guy that works at locally who's very, very, very good on SAQ, speed, ladders, work the feet, quick feet. But then I think that's only one part of 25 segments to a game.
Yeah, I think you touched on it. To me, I think if there's a thought process behind it and there's repetition and you've got the players that can do it, I'm all for kids, full-time, part-time teams playing out. What I don't understand is I watch a lot of lower league football, lower league EFL football, non-league. What I don't get is doing it for the sake of doing it because they've seen it on TV. So the keeper will, you got your two centre halves in the 6-yard box. He rolls it to the centre half. The centre half then has a panic, plays it back to him, and he boots out the pitch. Now, to me, that's doing it for doing its sake, and I'd rather get it forward on the first go and set up from that. But going back to what you just said, obviously there's lots of one-to-one coaches. There's lots of sort of different types of one-to-one coaches, and you touched on it a little bit, your parents. Is it more with you that you ask the parents what you want them to work on, or do you have that first session where you look at Christian and think, actually, Christian's left foot is absolutely pony, we need to work on that and go from there? Is it how do you work?
There's a kid,
is it actually parents that say to you, do what you want?
To a certain degree. I'll get people going, oh yeah, by the way, under-8, his heading's awful. And I look at him and I think it's been outlawed.
Yeah.
And being a centre-half, and I know you played in there and you probably headed the ball 3 million times, I don't know where that's going, by the way. This new rule of unintentional heading. But in terms of answering your question with it, I think to a certain degree you listen to it, you hear it, and you go, right, okay, but then you kind of say to them, like, I've got a kid tonight, I've got him receiving on his left foot and driving off of it. But I said, as soon as you beat him, you can cut in. As soon as there's space in front of you, you can cut in. And the multiple repetitions, and I think when you see and you hear people like Bellingham, Ollie Watkins, the goal against Holland, he said, I've made that run in training 600 times. I've made that pass in training 600 times. And for me, I wanted to screenshot that. I wanted to hear that, and I wanted to put that out, because what I don't think a lot of kids see, and more importantly, a lot of parents see, and say Ronaldo smashed that free kick in the top corner from 30 yards, but I don't see the 25 million times he's missed at training, and they don't see the repetition. And listen, I've had people come with me for 3 or 4 weeks, and they've gone, it's very, very samey, and I'm like, but it's consistent, and you're playing at a higher tempo, and it's their choice, and they've gone elsewhere. 6, 7, 9, 10 weeks later, they've come back and gone, well, he's not improved as much as he improved. And having been lucky enough to coach a couple of, there's a manager locally. I coached 2 of the kids. He's the Millwall manager currently, but yeah, I've coaching their kids, and when you've got him saying that what you're doing is right, and you've got to take notice to that, and you've got to take people going, do you know what? You've got to take care of that. To hear that, they think that you're doing the right things with the kids, and he's a pro license, he's working in the championship. So I'll kind of listen to them. But the big repetition, there's a thing I've tried to post on social media this week. There's Rooney and Sturridge, and Rooney talks about the famous goal he scored at Everton, and he said that he did it in his back garden, and the only way he could play that wrapped reverse thing, was he had to hit it around a tree, because it was in his back garden. And he said, I've replayed that in my head 60,000 times, and I've done it 60,000 times, and it just so happened I've done it at 16 against Arsenal in the Premier League. But that repetition is probably what's enabled him to do that so well.
Again, touching on that, do you think that's is that a kid thing as well, saying that we're doing the same thing all the time, or would you say it's more the parents? Because again, bring it back to my son, I ran home to him about you can't expect to do anything on the pitch if you're doing it once or twice. That's a what they call it, the 1,000-hour rule, whatever, the 100-hour rule, whatever it is. You have to, as you say. One of the best things that I ever had as a kid was living down a cul-de-sac and having a wall and just playing up against the wall, So do you think,
I did the same. I lived literally at the bottom of a cul-de-sac in Tillingham, literally Birch Road, and it was, fence, bouncing off of it.
But coming back to that, do you think that kids are prepared to put in the work? Again, as I say, I asked you earlier about whether it's the distraction or whether it's actually because parents can only get them to practice their football if they take them to a 1-to-1 and it's official, and you've got to go in the car, and you're not saying Christian, go to the end of the garden, do 1,000 keep ups, wrap it against the wall 500 times on each foot, come back and tell me when you're done. No, actually, Dad, I'm gonna stick YouTube on, or
I just think it's environment. I think it's a little bit environment. I think COVID, I don't know what year, Florence must have been really young.
Yeah.
I mean, Bert must have been year 2 at school. He's missed a year at school. I think social media, we've spoke about it briefly. You only need to click on newspapers and you hear of stuff being nicked down the road and around the corner, and parents go, I don't want you going there. I don't want you going in the back.
That's a great point.
I do think if you spoke to your 2 and you went, and then I know they're primary school and my other half's boys at primary school, if you said to them like 6 sixes, they'd be able to whack out their times
Oh,
table.
100%, yeah.
You do that to Bert in 2 years when he's year 8 at senior school, he won't have a clue. They go, hang on a minute, that's
Well, it won't phone, right?
Yeah. But that's a repetition thing. That's create an environment. There's loads of theories. There's that. I think it's a 10,000 hour theory.
That's it. Yeah.
About the piano player. If you play something 10,000 hours, you can become outstanding in your field.
Well, I think the one I always use with Bert is I think it was 18 minutes a day. If you do 18 minutes a day for a year, you'll be in the top.
But
couple of percent of the
practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
The practice makes permanent argument. You listen. If you practice something poorly, you're going to be brilliant at doing it bad, right?
Yeah, I think.
Briefly, the point is if you practice it at a level of doing it badly, it proves the point that repetition works because you become very good at doing it badly.
Yeah.
And if you can get that right, and you can get them mastered right, then it proves that repetition. But listen, you're in charge of a football team, and you're in charge, and they're asking for. I'm not knocking them, by the way, because they've got a business and they've got to put roof over heads and stuff. But if you're talking 75 quid for a court at a 3G, you've got 16 kids, and someone comes to you and goes, "Your long range passing ain't on."
Yeah.
You got no chance. So I think they have to adapt to the environment. And where you got one-to-ones, look, ideally you'd want to work in a 18-yard box. You want a little bit of room to be able to move around. But when you've got 16 players and they're on a court at goals, you can't. And everything has to be to feet, and it's on 3G and it's perfect.
Sure.
And that's tough because it creates an environment where the old saying about a flea.
Bit of a fake environment, really.
The old saying about reaching your potential, there's something about a flea. If you cap it for the first 6 weeks of its life and then you take the cap off, the flea won't jump above the cap.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's conditioned and it can't grow. And then it's the same thing as anything else. And I'm lucky enough to have 7 or 8 kids I've had now 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And they're in every week and they're getting better and better and better. And that for me means I must be doing something right, and what we're working on must be right. And I also have people that I'll see now pre-season. Won't see them again. I might see them at Christmas for a couple of sessions, tick over, do a little bit. But it's the whole one-to-one world is crazy because there's. Everyone's watching everyone else. And I think touching back on what you just said about doing it properly, I think we can all put a social media session on.
So that's a great segment because you touched on something earlier and it's got me thinking that maybe I did see it before COVID, but I think COVID's actually brought it to the forefront more, this whole one-to-one sort of environment and, the real mass load of coaches that are doing it right. And I walk through the park with my kids. We had a cricket game the other Friday night. I was walking through Belfast Park, and there was a coach there with thousands of cones, and I just chuckling to myself. Right, it's just.
Do you not remember though when we were younger? They'd be going, "Where's the aeroplane landing?"
Yeah, and I was just about to say, like, I said to Bert, "Jesus Christ, where's the aeroplane landing there?" Like. I always say to people, like when they talk about one-to-one coaches, just if you can't do it yourself, you got to pick the coach correctly. You got to at least know what they're doing because it's a waste of money, right?
100%. And don't get me wrong, right? You talk about COVID. Was it a delivery day takes the boredom away?
Exactly.
Right? And you're buying stuff. Look, I've got ladders and hurdles and bands and this and that and that. But then I've kind of filtered it mainly to fit in the car.
Yeah.
2 free mannequin.
But if you're making it specific to their requirements, got no problem about it. Use what you want, right?
Yeah.
But to your point, do you think now that more coaches in your environment, it's more about how it looks social media wise to actually how it is for that child? Because I see some things online and I think, Jesus Christ, I could do that. Yeah. I could get Charlotte to do that in the garden with Bert. Like, no, but like because it puts some music on it and a couple of great graphics, it looks good.
During COVID, I was doing challenges. I was doing the old inside of the foot, laces outside of the foot, both feet, the 6-touch challenge.
Yeah.
And they'd send them in, and then I'd do like you get 3 online session. Or 35 seconds. How many keep me uppies? Kid got 230. It was a joke.
Yeah.
Right, and then I was doing wall passes off the old school, off the fence, off the rebounder, 225. And for that period of time, they were doing that because it kept the boredom away. Mum and Dad would go and do it. For me, when I did it in the back garden, always like loved getting to the next door neighbour to the brink of I'm going to steal your ball. And I stopped, right? Because it was fun back then. But I'm not saying anyone listening